Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Page 32.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה בני ישראל הכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה לי ענו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלום יר חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. ושמור צאתנו בואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. וידבר משה את מועדי אדוני אל בני ישראל יגדל ויקדש שם רבה בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעלם ולעלמי עולמיה יתברך יברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן ביעלמה ויאמרו אמן.
Pages 41 to 44. Kaddish Shalem on page 48.
יגדל ויקדש מרבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכונו ומכונו וחייתך בית ישראל, בעגליו זמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עולמיה, יתברך, יברא וישתבח וירפר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל, לשם דקודשה בריחו, לילה מכה בחטא ושירדש בחטא ולחמת אדם מרבי עלמא ואמרו אמן. יקבל צלותנו ואותנו לכל ישראל, קדם ובכל ושמיה ואמרו אמן. יש למה רבה משמיה וחיים עלינו וכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומה ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
If anybody would like grape juice for Kiddush, come forward quickly.
You?
Does anybody want any? Or does anybody want? You gotta come forward.
Thank you. Yeah, right.
It's funny, when Rebecca got to college, she was super excited because in her cafeteria, in her dorm, they had grape juice every day, not just Shabbat. Woo. Page 50 for Kiddush. Savri.
Chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol olam, v'ramanu mikol lashon, v'kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav. V'atiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'yahava, moedim l'simcha, hagim uzmanim l'sason, et yom Hag HaShavuot hazeh, zman matan Toratenu, mikra kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu v'charta, v'yotanu kidasha mikol hamim. U'moedei kodshecha, b'simcha v'sason, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shechianu,
v'kiyimanu, v'higianu, lazman hazeh.
Page 51 for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה, צר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. נאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
As we turn to the mourner's Kaddish, we call forth the memory of our yard sites for this 6th day of the month of Sivan. Abel Kowalski, Albert Wine, Edith Rosenthal, Ellen Krampf, Esther Riccio, Isidore Adler, Jenno Breitner, Lawrence Held, Regina Rosen, and Stephen Weinberg. Other names to add before the Kaddish? Thank you. Their memories are with us now to recite Kaddish on page 52. Yit Gedal, Yit Gedash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divra Kirute, Be'amlik Machute, B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach le'olam l'omei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei d'kudesha brichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbekata v'nekemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehesh lama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. And we'll stand now for Hatikva and then Yigdal on 53.
Olol baleva v'penima nefesh yehudi omiya ulfatei mizrach kadima in retzion tzofia olol hatikvateinu hatikva Liyotam choshi be'artzeinu Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. Liyotam choshi be'artzeinu Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim.
You can be seated. Yigdal on 53.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח נמצא וייהנה אל מציאותו אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו נעלם וגם אסוף ליהדותו אין לו דמות הגוף ויהנה גוף ולא נערוך אליו קדושתו כרמול לכל דבר אשר נברא ראשון וראשית לראשיתו הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר יורה גדולתו מלכותו שפע נבואתו נתנו אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא ומעביר את אמונתו תורת ונתן לימואל על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו לא יחריפה אלה ולא ימידתו, לעולם יהיים לזולתו, צופה ויודע זתרנו, מביא לסוף דבר בקדמתו, גומל איש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רע כרישתו, ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפעול מחקק את ישועתו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדיין לשם תהילתו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדיין שם תהילתו.
Yasher koach, yasher koach. Beautiful. So, thinking back now about the film, in a minute, I want to perhaps bring a little bit more nuance to the idea, but wanted to see first if anyone had responses or reactions that you felt were bursting inside of you, you wanted to share or kind of get out before we kind of looked at it from a different angle, perhaps. Not a contrary angle, just a slightly different angle, by looking at the Gemara, the Talmud, where the teaching that they quoted comes from, and bringing a little bit more context and depth to it. But did anyone have any responses to the movie first?
I found the comment on the way they said Har Sinai and Sinai and hatred. The play on that word was certainly enlightening to me, because I thought that was fascinating. Because we always talk about in Judaism light and dark, good and bad, right and wrong. Like here's the mountain given the law, and now it's and hatred. So I was enlightened by that particular section.
One trouble with the whole thesis, it basically claims that because Judaism is enlightenment and it's part of the, quote, Christian or the Judaic tradition, then why are the Jews singled out as the sole participants and get rid of the Christian part of this ethic? Supposedly it's all part of the same system of thought, and here the Jews are been persecuted for years. Granted, you can say, yeah, there were some uprisings, maybe Arabs or Muslims against the Catholics and the Christians, but it seems to me that it's not the same as what's been the plight of the Jews over the centuries.
Okay. So, are you asking the question of why just...
I'm trying to understand this thesis, because the thesis basically says this all comes down to that one idea.
Yeah.
But that idea doesn't seem like it's holding water if the Jews are the only ones being singled out as part of a Christian ideology, religious thought process too.
Yes, I think it does. That's what, and I kind of want to get into that part of it. I think it's a very narrow line that they're taking about anti-Semitism in a very specific form. Now, I think the truth of that is not weakened necessarily by understanding how it's different in other places, or how there are alternate explanations or alternate settings as well where we see anti-Semitism. And to understand that, that's kind of where I want to go with it by looking at the Talmud in a second. So I agree with you. I think it's a very powerful but narrow kind of perspective on it, very much tied to the moment, and a very, very specific ideological perspective that's shared by the Muslim Brotherhood and by Nazism.
Yeah, well, what you just last said in response to what Michael said, Hitler was no friend of Christians in the churches. They were next on the list. And when he got together with the Mufti and all the Mufti's compatriots, they were no friends of Christians in the
Yeah, Carolyn?
It still originated with the Jews, and I think the point of it was that it will always germinate with the Jews. They may be able to put it down in other ways, but as long as there are Jews on the earth, it will, spring up wherever they are, and that's why the attack is always on the Jews, because that's the origin
Mm-hmm.
from Sinai.
I think that the movie was trying to explain why Jews are hated, and there were some very good reasons that were given. But in the end, I beg to differ with the real reason for it. And I think the reason is that the Jews are a small people. They're easy to hate because you hate people who look different than you, seem different than you, and because we're small people, we're also easy to annihilate. If Hitler wanted to annihilate, let's say, all the Muslims in the world, it's impossible to annihilate 1 billion people. But you've got 6 million people. You can put them on trains and transfer them to concentration camps. So in a pragmatic sense, I think the Jews are,
Low-hanging fruit?
targets, exactly, easy targets.
I think it's expand on what Carolyn was saying. Even though for centuries Jews have been the target and we've constantly been tried to be annihilated by ruling authorities and whatever else, in each generation we've survived and we've thrived and actually become very successful within those populations that tried to destroy us. So that even brings up a higher level, I feel, of hatred, because no matter what they try to do, we seem to be so successful because of our intelligence, because of our perseverance, and because of our faith. And faith is the one thing that they can use as the focal point as a target.
Okay. I mean, and it's not to go against any of it. I think these are all good points. No?
Statement that anti-Semitism rests entirely upon lies and libel and is based upon an ideology that I was taken by the statement that anti-Semitism rests largely or entirely upon lies and libel, and that it's based upon an ideology that aggression against Jews equals resistance and heroic, and that on October 7th, every Jew had a decision to make, a choice to make, and to choose life. But I was also struck by the fact that there are many among us that are self-hating Jews that actually have not made that choice.
So, to get... Oh, yeah, that, if I can, I'll do my best, that, there's a teaching of Rabbi Eliezer in Pirkei Avot that everyone should do a number of 3 things, one of which is to do tshuva the day before your death. Right, to do tshuva the day before your death. What that means, you should do tshuva every day, right? So every day we have the opportunity, right, to choose life, to flip that a little bit on its head, but it's really kind of the same idea. We all Jews, we have the opportunity every single day to choose life. Sometimes, some days, like Douglas Murray, he said it a number of times. It's in his book on the current war that's already out, and I recommend you read it, that there are times in history where it's like a flare gun goes off, and you can see where everybody is, right? Like it's in the dark, and a flare goes off it's a time of war, but then all of a sudden everything's illuminated for a brief second, and you can see where everybody is. And on October 7th, that was such a day, especially for Jews. Where were you? Are you choosing life or not? And that sadly, there are some self-hating Jews who accepted other ideologies and have not chosen life. Am I getting close? Okay. Oh, yeah, I paraphrase. So, kind of getting back to the place where Michael and I were kind of on a shared vibe, I think that the ideology of the Grand Mufti, of the supremacism of Islam, the supremacism of Nazism, it's the same thing. It's a universal victory that they are both after. And the first, the most stubborn problem in the way, perhaps especially because we're so small, you can't even defeat the Jews, right? Well, what kind of world power are you if you can't even defeat the Jews? It's an embarrassment. It's to them. And there's a lot of evidence from a particular side of Islam. This is not all of Islam. This is a particular side of Islam. That is an embarrassment. That the Jews have Israel, that the Jews survive, is problematic. That doesn't explain the 1,800 years of anti-Semitism from the Christian world before the Holocaust. It doesn't explain Jews living as second-class citizens in Muslim countries for the 1,300 years after the Muslim conquest of different places. Right? That's not explained by the theory of the movie. The Catholic Church purposely kept Jews around. We were to be kept and protected as long as we weren't too successful. Right? And why was that? To be kept as an example of what happens when we don't accept Jesus, right? I imagine it's a similar idea of being dhimmi in Islam. I would defer to those who have experience in the room, living in a Muslim country where your synagogue has to be more humble, smaller, lower than any mosque. You gotta even maybe hide it at times. Can't be too obvious, right? So the theory of the movie doesn't quite explain that and that kind of anti-Semitism. So I'm curious I want to look at a little thing in the Talmud that appears right before the section they quoted. And by the way, I have copies of the text so you can take them home if you'd like to look at it a little bit more and see all the details. But, and I'm going to paraphrase because it's long. I'll kind of bring us there more quickly. But if anyone has any ideas, what's the emotional motivation? What was the emotional motivation for the church? And then for Martin Luther? And for, by the way, the Jesuits who until the beginning of the 20th century had as a condition for entrance that you had to prove you had no Jewish lineage for 3 generations. Right? We have to show a ketubah. We have to find a way to show that we have Jewish, our parents were Jewish, our mother was Jewish, whatever. We can show. They have to be a Jesuit, to enter the Jesuit tradition from Catholicism. You had to prove no Jewish heritage for 3 generations. And that was until the beginning of the 20th century. What's the emotional thing behind that?
Separation.
What?
Separation and transcendence of that's the old
why is this so threatening? I mean, a little people, tiny.
Because we were the descendants of the killer of Christ. That was still being taught, that was still being promoted.
Yeah, so what does that make us then?
Murderers, bad people, the DNA and blood of bad people.
We rejected everything that they took as like, this is how we're gonna do it now. So it flies in the face. Our existence as, continued existence as Jews is a repudiation of everything that they say is true, according to their eschatology and religious doctrine.
It's our stubbornness, sticking with our approach.
I'm not the other way around. I take it as Catholic guilt. Because if you look at the beliefs, okay, throughout the Torah or the beginning, in the film, there's always a two-part question.
Mhm.
You know, even with the giving of the Ten Commandments. There was a gift of God, but there was a Jew, okay? You go back to the beginning of Genesis, you know, when God asked Cain, you know, where's from? All right, and Cain lied to him, okay?
Mhm.
There's good and evil there. There's always two questions that were, and the Torah is basically built on everything, two questions, good and evil, okay? Now, if you follow Jesus, no, the Catholic Church is supposed to follow the teachings of Jesus. And the history of the Catholic Church basically defines all the teachings of Jesus. All right, they're supposed to follow the beliefs of man, taking care of the simple man. But they followed the path of the Roman Empire and built a kingdom. So to me, it was the guilt of the Catholic Church. And they did not follow the teachings of Jesus. So there was guilt there. So they had to disassociate themselves with the beliefs that the Jewish people were following of taking care of their fellow man. So they wanted to disassociate from the history of the Jewish faith and the beliefs that those people were still Orthodox. They were following what the Torah was teaching them.
Mhm.
So they had to separate. And that's where anti-Semitism came, because they had to disassociate with them. They had to punish them because of their own guilt, of not following their teachings.
So the tension between empire, right, which is the institution, you hear this all the time, well, we should do that, that's the more the right thing, but we have to think of the greater good that can be done by the institution, right? And we can't weaken the institution because then it will not be able to do those things.
You had
So,
the Templars were following the teachings, and the Holy Roman Empire
yeah.
didn't like it. And what they do, on Friday the 13th, they massacred them all. So, you know, the whole
Yeah.
church was against everything that was followed. So they had to disassociate what the true followers, the Jews, were believing.
So let's use that as a segue, because I think that I think there's something to it. I would not be expert enough as a historian or a theologian to say, there's only one answer, but I think that's a part of the idea. And I want to share with you a beautiful Agadah, a beautiful story or legend in the Talmud that comes about a page before the teaching about Har Sinai and Sinai, right? There's Sinai, which is the mountain, and Sinai, which is hatred. Like the temple, the first and second temples were destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, that's the same, Sinai, hatred. And the way the Talmud works, this often happens where you have a number of stories that are bunched together on a similar theme or the same theme, but with slightly different perspectives or approaches. And that's done intentionally to get us to be thinking at it from different perspectives, to stretch us, to make us process things differently, right? And so this is also, the story is about the giving of the Torah and the Ten Commandments, but it's not about Har Sinai. It's about Moshe and the angels. Okay? So I think, though, it gets perhaps at an emotional issue that resonates with Catholicism, Islam, Protestantism for a time, about why the negativity versus what would it take to be different, be Protestant, to be Catholic, to be Muslim, and to accept that there are Jews who have a different way. Right? So, and I'm going to paraphrase to kind of keep it tight. Rabbi Hoshua ben Levi teaches this, that when Moses went up the mountain, the angels said to God, "Why is he coming up here?" And God says, "I'm going to give him the Torah to take it to the people." And the angels say, "What are you thinking, God? This is the treasure you've been hiding for 972 generations." They do the math. There's a reason why that all works. Sorry, 974 generations. Since the creation of the world, you've hidden this treasure. And now you're going to give it to them? Flesh and blood? Why would you do that? So what does God do? God says, "Moshe, what's your answer?" So Moshe says, "Well, what's in it? What's written in the Torah?" So God says, "Ani Hashem Elohecha asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim." I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. So Moses looks at the angels and says, "Were you in Egypt in servitude?" And they go quiet. And they go back and forth through every commandment. Do you have a mother and a father? Do you live among the nations of the world and have to deal with Avodah Zarah and need to know that you shouldn't do it? No, right? Do you have jealousy and such that you would murder or that you would covet? Angels don't have that. You have no need for this, right? And so eventually, the angels give up, yeah. They agree with God that it's the right decision to give the Torah to the people. As it is written, "Adonai our God, how glorious is your name in all the earth." Therefore, it shouldn't just remain in the Marom with God and the angels. It should be on the earth with us and the people. And they gave up this idea that it should be just God's beauty and grace in the heavens. So, the angels, they do more than just concede a point. Right? They're not just losing an argument. In this sacred discussion, what's being drawn out here? And what do the angels and Moshe agree upon?
Their differences.
They agree upon their differences. That the angels are egoless, right? They have no need for moral. Yeah, that's what they are. They get it from God directly, right? So they don't need it. They're egoless. They don't need the Torah. They live in this constant relationship with God. Moses and the people,
Experience evil.
he's experienced evil. They need the help, right? But they also agree about something else. Which is probably so obvious that by asking it, it's too simple a question to ask. But they both recognize that God is God. Like, they agree about that. And they agree that they have different approaches or different purposes and needs. And so it's not threatening anymore for the angels to see the Moses and the humans as competitors. Right? But instead can see them as complementary, both in service and worship of God. Which is our approach to pluralism in the world. We don't want everyone to become Jewish, right? That's not our goal. What's the goal of the Jewish people? Goodness. What do we want everyone in the world to recognize? One true God. However you want to do it, whatever your tradition is, it's fine, right? But just one true God, that's it. Let us have our way to our one true God. You have your way, and we're all good. But the problem is that Islam, and to a great extent, for a long time, the Christian church also, didn't see it that way. And this is the war that's going on within those traditions. Right? Do they have to be the victors ultimately and take over and have supremacy in order for there to be redemption in the world? Well, that was the Muslim creed for a long time. And the Crusades before that. Right? And that's one of the battles that's going on in Islam between, that's the real battle between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Didn't Judaism begin that idea with the idea of Mashiach? The whole reason that there is the clash between Jews at the time of Jesus and the followers of Jesus, because the Jews didn't want to accept him as the Mashiach. But the idea of Mashiach, in other words, the redemption, and that all nations, that's what it says, in the Elaine, all nations will recognize the one God, regardless of who they are, they will recognize the one God and worship God on earth.
Yeah, at God's holy mountain, right?
So that, the idea that, and it's a Jewish God, right?
Yeah.
It's